I wanted to lay out calmly what's gone on and is going on from a kind of communication and strategic perspective regarding the Southport stabber, I refuse to say his pretend name, and the government, and then the bigger kind of communication strategy that's being used to push control. So that's the aim of what I'm about to do, and it breaks down into two parts. The first part is just the three things that went on. Number one, clearly, the thing you're not allowed to say still is that the attacker in Southport was an Islamist terrorist. You can't say that, despite him having Al-Qaeda documents in his room, preparing and creating ricin, which for that to be publicised means it had to have government approval weeks and weeks ago. All of his background, his face, the reason photos have been hidden. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the first thing of three things is that the government knew. The government knew all along that this individual is a radicalised individual. He's got the facial hair to prove it. He's got the documentation to prove it. Goodness knows what they've got from his tech and his gadgets and the rest of it. But it doesn't matter. They all knew, which means Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper and all the rest of them with their flowers and their sad faces all knew. At the same time, point two, as they all knew, they were prepared to lie to your faces. So they pushed out deliberately the government, the powerful, the controlling religious organisations, the money, the establishment, the different religions that work together with certain religions to control everything. Pushed out what they wanted you to believe. Oh, Welsh Christian. Oh, look at the pictures of him in the choir. Oh, look at the pictures of him as a young child. Do you think just if I was charged with something or did something, whatever, do you think they would use pictures of me when I was in my school uniform, being captain of the whatever team? They'd use the most awful pictures of me that they bloody could. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is they went out and deliberately manufactured propaganda, so misinformation, disinformation, the stuff that people put out in wartime in order to try and control or lift spirits or push information during times of crisis. That's precisely what they did. Welsh Christian. And then they used the mainstream media, so people like Dan Hodges, you will know examples from your Twitter feed. You'll have screenshots of people saying, how dare you say he was a Muslim? You see, he was a nice Welsh Christian. They used those complicit idiots to launder their propaganda, to make it stick, to make it fixed. They used Dan Hodges with a horsewhip. I'll expose you. I'll humiliate you if you deviate from the government line. And for someone like Dan Hodges, he'll be thanked by the number 10 communications team. Maybe he'll be invited to a briefing that he wasn't going to get invited to. Maybe he'll get to ask a question at Prime Minister's Questions or something. So the rewards for him for being the horsewhipper of the government lie are right there in front of him. It's career progression. I was surrounded by these boys for the longest time when I didn't want any part of what they were about. And the third thing that's really important, of course, and many of you know a lot of all of this, but just to confirm, is then they jail people, and they jailed them at speed, and they release criminals to jail dissenters. And that's what this was about. It wasn't about online hate laws or whatever. They have to find a mechanism to dress it up as law, but it's basically Russia or anyone else, or China, probably a better example because they don't believe in freedom, China, where if you speak against the government line, you're arrested and you're jailed, and often you're disappeared, as is the case with one of our lovely guys who committed, was suicided, whichever which way. So they knew, they deliberately pushed the lie, which they laundered through mainstream media, and then they jailed dissent. They jailed people who spoke out against the government. Okay. The second important thing, and this will be missed in kind of the original outraging around this, is timing. This took a lot of strategic communication preparation, because all of this Southport information is coming out on the eve of the budget, and today, the budget. Now, from an insider's perspective, inside mainstream media, inside big organisations, the BBC, the Guardian, any organisation you want to think of, right? They'll have had planning meetings for the budget. So inside the BBC, people have had calendar appointments and they go to meetings with their notebook and their pen, and they talk about the budget and who's covering it and who's doing what. And this will happen months in advance, right? So, okay, Sophie Rayworth, right, you're going to stand in a field dressed in country gear to give the viewers the, sense that you're out and about, and you're going to talk about what it means in the countryside. Okay, this trout, you're going to dress in like a businessy suit and you're going to be in business to talk about what it means for businesses. And then this presenter here, I know this because I know this world. I know this conversation. You're going to dress up like semi-cash and you're going to be in a home of a regular northern white working class family. What does it mean for them? And then you are going to be in the home of a black family. And that I know that happens, and that's happened in every single major news organisation about the budget. You could say, so what, Katie? So what? These days, the media doesn't really care about news. It's no longer information it's sharing. It's often propaganda. It's often a government arm. It's often doing whatever gets it the most clicks, whatever can get it the most revenue, doing whatever's better for that specific producer or presenter. Paul Brand at ITV, desperate to be seen on social media. So this budget stuff is already set. So if you want to make a story disappear or make it as hard as possible to tell it, or just keep it very, very low down the agenda, what do? Put it out the day prior to the budget. Because all of these lazy news organisations like the BBC are no longer nimble, they're no longer agile, they don't want to be fleet of foot, they want to be in their comfortable studio doing stuff that they know will work, and they've prepared the graphics package. And if they've prepared the graphics package, well, they need to use the graphics package. This all goes into the Southport stabbing cover-up. So what you do and what these guys have needed to do from a strategic communications perspective months ahead of this, well, since the Southport stabbing, is reschedule the Southport stabber's court date with the pictures that have come out where they've hidden his beard deliberately. You need to get Tommy Robinson off the streets and jailed. So that happens next. Get Tommy in jail. Okay, that's done. Then you've got the budget all set to go. You've got all the teams lined up. You've got all the government briefing. You've got the government telling people that they'll reward them if they do a nice job of covering the budget. Cozy relationships. And then you drop the story. The Southport stabber isn't a nice Welsh Christian lad after all. He's actually an Islamist terrorist, something you're still not allowed to say. You drop it just before the budget because all of the news teams are already in place. They've all decided what they're going to do with all of their scheduled meetings. It's all planned. There's an agenda. People, let's not mess with it. We won't change it. No, stick with the budget because we have to cover that. So the two big thoughts I'd love you to, if you've stuck with me, the two big thoughts I'd love you to take away from this, and maybe I'll clip these and put them at the front. So there's two big thoughts. I'd love you to stay with this to fully realise, and very likely you have already. Number one is the level of control and planning that's gone into the cover-up of the Southport stabber, to the extent that you had to think about when Tommy needed to be inside. You had to reschedule a court case. You had to crunch all those different organisations to make this play out so that the budget got the headlines, and you try and make this story disappear in order to control and to control the British people. Mechanisms of control. And the second thing, and this is obviously the most important thing, and the thing that's had my whole heart for 15 years since I've been trying to call this out, and clearly we're making progress, is that People are aware now of so many things. But one of the things that's worth stating very clearly and carefully is to direct your attention to the lengths to which people in power will go to protect those who are doing us harm and the religion they say they are doing it in the name of, versus the extent to which those in power are willing to crucify those merely trying to stand up for what they used to have pride in. The powerful, and it doesn't, Keir Starmer's just a puppet, a bit player, a nothing, another pawn. The powerful are willing to crush dissent in the law-abiding in order to protect their agenda, even when that means protecting a guy who stabbed our children. And if you just want to follow that at a more rational level, a bit closer to home, without WEF and Davos and all the rest of it, if you want to know, the next, where the voting bloc is going to be in the future, where the population is going to be in the future, who's going to have power in the UK in the future, where the big money is coming from right now here in the UK, the demographics are already there. So if you want to feel it at a more rational, immediate level, there's that. But if you see it just as a more global thing, crush dissent and the ordinary in order to protect the agenda. And the Southport stabber is protected because it's the agenda that would be at risk if he was left in our hands or was sat in his truth. Those are the things I wanted to say. Thank you if you managed to stick with me through that, and hang in there. Hang in there. I will begin, I think, saying this, is that I prepare in order to endure, in order that we prevail. So hang in there. Many of us are absolutely ready to keep going no matter what. I'll see you somewhere on the road.